What's up, you guys? Hey, it is week number 11 of the Chazway podcast. So grateful that you guys are here listening and watching today. Man, it's just another day, another week. It's a great week. And I've got a cool guest and a cool story of how I met this guy, by the way. His name is Wyatt Cote. Do you say Cote? Is it just like Cote, like it sounds?
I would say Cody.
Is it Cody? I knew I'd butcher that.
C-O-
I was so
C-O-T.
confident. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So now that I've screwed that up, cool. So yeah, this guy was he was at the comedy club in Oklahoma City at the Looney Bin. Anna and I were out for Valentine's weekend, and we thought he was hilarious. And so instead of buying a shirt, I was like, "Hey, think you could be on my podcast?" And so he agreed to do so. And so here we are, a couple months later. I'm super excited to have you on, Wyatt. So I don't know a lot about Wyatt. I'm excited for him to share his story, kind of a little bit about his past and why he is and where he is today. Fast forward to real life time. But what I would say is I know he's from the West Coast, and I know you know how to surf. Yeah. Because you shared that part of your story, and I know you're hilarious. So, dude, first of all, thank you again for coming on. And why don't you introduce yourself and talk about a little bit all the way from the beginning? Are you from California? And then let's go from there, man.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Yes, so I'm born and raised in Long Beach, California, which is right between LA and Orange County, pretty much a little bit south of LA. And I grew up here. I had I guess a nice but troubled childhood. I grew up a surfer, so I learned how to surf when I was 6 years old. Is when I got put in surf camp, and wow. I had a strong draw to surfing. When I was a little kid, I just loved it, and I had all the posters up in my room, and I begged my parents to let me learn. So when I was 6 years old, they put me into surf camp. And I cried my first time out in the water. I was so scared. Just a little, me and my friend Brad, and Brad was 5, and he was just going for it. He was fearless, but I was horrified. And so then growing up, I started to go all the time. And so I got into competitive surfing when I was about 13. And I surfed competitive. I had a couple endorsements in high school, and never was good enough to be pro, but was and I still surf all the time now. Love it. And I went to the University of Hawaii for college, which I wound up dropping out of to pursue comedy.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like my surfing background. And then my childhood was kind of, I would say it's very unique of comedians, because I think a lot of us come from these kind of I don't know, struggles. That's what they say comedians come from, is the struggle. I think a lot of great anything comes from struggle, and I wasn't really like that. I was raised to a very wealthy family, grew up on the beach in a nice house, but I had these kind of personal struggles with school, and not really fitting in, and not ever wanting to be in school, and that's the stuff that money can't buy.
Yeah.
So I got into I started getting into some trouble when I got into high school, and when I was 15, it was April of almost 15 years ago, April of 2007, I got woken up in the middle of the night and sent away to one of those troubled teen programs.
Wow. Your parents woke you up?
My dad woke me up. My mom was out of town taking my sister to check out colleges up in San Francisco. So my dad woke me up, and he was like, "Hey, there's some men here who are here to talk to you." And I knew immediately what was happening, because I'd seen it happen on a TV show before. And they hire guys to come into your room in the middle of the night. So, because they know I wouldn't have gone willingly. So they pretty much woke me up and said, you can go the easy way or go the hard way, and we're going to the airport, and we can't tell you where you're going, and we can't tell you how long you're going to be gone.
So let me stop you there for a second. So were you, when you say like you were having struggles at 15 years old, like give me the severity of that. Like for your dad to do that, that gives me, either your dad was heartless or he loved you so much he knew that was like, that's what had to happen. So what kind of things were you doing at 15?
So I was, that I was getting into, like, it started with just like smoking pot and drinking, and not definitely young to be doing that, but not tremendously out of normalcy for a high school kid. And so I got caught doing that, like when I was, summer going into like my sophomore year, and then things kind of like escalated. Like I just, I didn't stop. So I kept getting caught, and tensions were like really high in the house
Okay.
between me and my parents. That's really what happened.
Okay.
And
Like defiant and disrespectful and stuff.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I was a very, like, just a naturally poor student. Like I was, I'm not, to this day, I will tell you that I'm not meant for school. I was, I have a very bad attention span, not, I don't learn by listening. I learn by like doing.
Mhm.
I'm just really not wired for school. And my parents were very like, you know, wanted me to do well in school, and like, they would always be like, oh, like you just don't try, and like, um, so yeah, in hindsight, they've expressed that they kind of regret the way that they went about some things, like, by doing that to me. It kind of put me in a somewhat unfair position.
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, so I was, I pretty much got to the point where they took away like every freedom that I had.
Right.
So
Right.
I just kind of did whatever, because I didn't have anything to lose, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, things were, I was pretty out of control in the house there for a while, and they have now told me that they regret sending me away. Like
Did your dad do that because your mom was gone and she wouldn't have, like, do you think your mom just couldn't have, was that intentional that your mom wasn't home when your dad did that?
I'm not sure. That I know that they were both in on it,
They
like
were on board, both of them.
but yeah, but
Okay.
he didn't send me away behind my mom's back.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like they both knew. So I don't know that they intentionally planned it for when uh she was out of the house. I would say they very well could have, because my sister was out of the house too.
Yeah.
So it could have been an ideal time, because
Sure.
you know
Less
the
friction, maybe.
less potential ruckus of
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Is
and
your sister older or younger?
she's two
Oh, must
years
older,
she's
right?
two
Because she
years
was
older.
in
Yeah,
college. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So what happens then? So your dad sees you off, and you jump in this car with these guys, and then what does that look like? Were you scared? Were you pissed? Were you, what happened? What was in your mind?
I was really like heartbroken, because I just had this brand new girlfriend. So
Oh,
like, can I call her? And they were like, no. So I
wow.
was like, great, she's gonna be like, what the hell happened? Yeah, so I was really very like, sad, and um I just remember thinking, but I thought I was only gonna be gone for a month, because so they took me to the airport, and um we had to wait to get on a flight to the flight was to Boise, and only one of them came with me on the plane, and he was on the plane reading me this like pamphlet thing, and he was like, oh, you're going to a wilderness program, which I had never heard of before. So he said, he was kind of giving me the breakdown of like week, but he's like, oh, so it's a 3-week program. And I was like, okay, only going to be gone for 3 weeks. Like, it sucks, but not that big of a deal. And so I got to Boise, and he turns me over to this like elderly couple in the airport, and they drove me way outside of Boise, like, stopped at a doctor's office to give me a physical, and then drove me just out into the desert. And I'd never heard of this type of, I thought I was going to like a rehab, you
Yeah.
know. And so uh I got out to, hours out there, and I felt like Stanley in Holes when he's, like going out to Camp Green Lake on the bus,
Right.
and just in the back of the Suburban, like looking around the desert, like, and it's like,
It's happening.
yeah, it's like rolling hills and sagebrush, like not scenic, not beautiful, like, and so they take everything that you have like from home. So you don't have, obviously no phone, like you don't have your own clothes. And they give you everything that you're going to have to wear. And it was like khaki, utility pants, like khaki cargo pants, and like a white long sleeve shirt, and a couple jackets and some long underwear. I got there in April, so it was still like pretty cold when I got there. And then they drive you even farther out into the desert, and
Jeez.
they put me with a little, like, a group. I get there and there's like probably 3 different kids sitting around, but they're all spread out, and they had these bright orange hoodies on. That was like the hoodies that they gave us, like prison orange, and I was like, damn, like this is sketch, like this is scary. So I'm sitting, so they put me in a spot, like a little campsite, and they're like, just wait here and your instructors will be over. And so I'm just sitting there by myself, and I was like, I'm going to go wander over and talk to one of these other kids and see what is going on. And so I wandered over, and I just said, like, I got out half of a sentence, and I just hear, "Who's talking?" Like, and so I guess we weren't even supposed to talk to each other. So they finally like came over to me, and I was at what was called the orientation base, where they kind of get you, they show you how to like use your stuff that they show you how to like start a fire. We had a spark rock fire, and how you're going to like build your shelter. We didn't have like tents. We had like tarps with, tarps and like ropes that we would like tie up bushes, and then put the tarp up, like do like an A-frame. And they give us like our food and like show us how to cook our food, and like we had like little like billy cans, those like metal cans. And they just kind of, it's just orientation, they familiarize us with the equipment. So I was there for that evening, and then the next full day, and then the following morning. So I was there for about 36 hours. The following morning they picked me up and drove me out farther and put me with a group of, there's probably 8 guys in the group, and they fluctuate because people are coming and going, so the number of guys fluctuates. But I was still in what was called the individual phase. So I would like, basically I couldn't talk to anybody yet. I wasn't allowed to talk for 2 weeks.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so 2 weeks, no small talk, no conversations. I was only allowed to ask to go to the back. I was only allowed to ask the staff for something that I needed. So I could be like, hey, like, can I go to the bathroom? Or, hey, like, I'm out of this. But
was the staff nice, or was it like very prison-like, militant, or were they respectful?
So the first group, we have 2 staff members at a time. So the first guys, one of the guys was really nice, and the other guy was a total asshole. Guy Dennis, he was Mr. Tough Love was his claim, but there was no love there. He was
just tough, no love.
Yeah, he just liked abusing, be like, he was in no way like, but yeah, other than that, my staff experiences were almost all rather good. Cool. They were all quite nice. It was, younger guys anywhere from their mid-20s to mid-30s probably. Cool. And we had a therapist who would come out and see us in the field twice a week. And so the only conversations that I really had in the individual phase was with the therapist. But the meetings were so short. They were like 20 minutes. And it was only, it was like Monday and Thursday. So only 2 days. And so, we would hike around like all day, all morning. We would go from one site to the next, and you'd hike pretty much from breakfast until lunchtime. and then the afternoon would be spent like setting up camp and getting ready for dinner. And we had these like little curriculum books because we got school credit, so we would do
Okay.
these like these like workbook stuff. And then in the evening they would have like what they call like a group session, and everyone who was in the group would sit around the fire, and like you would talk one at a time. You'd be holding like a stick, and when you had it, that you could only talk when you had it, and then when you were done, you would pass it to the next person. But in the individual phase, I didn't get to partake. I would eavesdrop. I could kind of overhear it from where I was, but I wasn't allowed in on the group sessions. And then after 2 weeks, they put me into like, you get put into what's called the family phase, and that's you're still with the same group, but you can interact and talk, and that feels incredible when you get there. Like it oh man, you don't realize how it's felt like the equivalent of like getting out of there, because you're just 2 weeks of like no speaking, and you can finally conversation, and it just feels so good. You're like, you're like, I don't even care how much longer I'm out here, because I could finally talk.
And it's like you just don't even realize what you take for granted, I guess.
Yeah. And I'll tell you the thing. So I was out in the wilderness for 7 weeks.
So the 3 weeks was not the reality.
Yeah. So I got there, and they were like, well, as soon as they handed me off to that older couple at the airport, they were like, oh no, it's actually 4 weeks. And I was like, okay, still sucks, but still not that long. So then when I got into the program, they were like, oh no, it's 4 weeks is the minimum, and nobody gets out of here that quickly. They're like, its average is 6 to 10 weeks. So I was out there for 7 weeks. And yeah, you eat the same thing every day. Like, you have your 3 meals are different, but the meals are the same every day. And that's one thing that drives you crazy, is the food. Like you miss, just like, you just fantasize about having a candy bar, or just all, you realize you take for granted all the food you have available in the normal world, and you're eating the same thing constantly. The other thing is no music.
Sure.
So 7 weeks I went without hearing a song.
Yeah.
So
things you don't think of. You don't think about that.
Yeah, that's because I listen to music everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I go for a walk, headphones in, get in the car, music. I'm always, and so yeah, so those are the two things that I remember just really missing the most, was food and my iPod, this was the day of iPods.
Right. No, I was just gonna say, that's funny. Okay, so what is so by the time, let's get to week number 7. What's week 7 like of that program? Like, do you know that you're at the end? Is there like a wrap up phase? Do you know you're graduating?
Yeah, so about a week before you leave, they tell you that you're going to be headed home next week. So there's what's called a solo phase. The wrap up phase is the solo phase. So you go into solo on Sunday, and you get out on, I believe, a Thursday. So you go on Sunday, they pick you up and they take you to the solo. So you're in this big field. So all the kids that are leaving that week, and solo is basically where you're alone again. It's like a reflection time. So you're alone, and you're all spread out in this field, and you can see each other, but you're not supposed to like talk to each other. And you just sit there. They give you a book, and they gave me The Alchemist, and I read the whole book.
Great book.
I read the whole book in one day, I think, because there was nothing else to do.
Did they give everybody The Alchemist?
There was a few different books that they gave us, so I think, they might have given me something else too, but that's the one I definitely remember. And so, yeah, you're out there alone Sunday afternoon, and then all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and then Wednesday, everyone's parents come. If you're leaving that week, so the parents come out, and then they spend the last day with you. and they all, and you can all come together once the parents get there. So you all like, interact and reminisce on the the time, and
Hell.
just tell the stories. And like a lot of times kids who are in your group are leaving the same week as you, so some were in your group and some you're just meeting for the first time because they were from other groups. And there was a girls group too, so, and obviously where they separate the boys and the girls. And but going back, like I was about halfway into the program, about 3 weeks in, or 3 to 4 weeks in, when they told me that I wasn't going home after. So I didn't even know that I was going to another program. I thought it was just going to be wilderness and then done. And so that, like, oh man, that was devastating for me. Like, they told me that, and oh my gosh, I cried endlessly for like 2 days because I thought I was just going to go home. And of course, it was another one of those BS things where at first they're like, oh, it's just going to be for the summer. And then they're like, oh, it's going to be 6 months. And I get to my treatment. So I went directly from the wilderness to my treatment center, which was down in Utah. My parents picked me up and drove me. And I was in that treatment center for 9 months.
Wow. Drug treatment?
Yeah. I mean, it was just, it wasn't even just drugs. It was just behavioral, like, it involved, there were some kids that didn't even do drugs that were in there. There was.
But did everybody go to the treatment center? Was that part of the program?
No.
Okay.
So, you go to there's various treatment centers.
Okay. But your parents felt like that was what needed to happen next.
Yeah. Well, they had it, the programs had, it's a great big business,
Yeah.
It's a money thing. So, what's happening is a lot of these wilderness programs buy treatment centers. And then they
recommend that what's best for you.
Everybody, and they have these parents, like, the way I look back on it, and it's something that I didn't really start thinking of until like the past couple years. They have these kids and the parents, like, really, just for lack of a better word, brainwashed so intensely to, like, I remember just my parents being like, if you don't complete this treatment, like, you're gonna die. Like, they have, the therapists have the parents and the students convinced that, you'll go out into the real world and die if you don't finish your treatment. Like, and if you leave early, all of this will be for nothing. Like, and the parents are so heavily coached to not give in to, like, bringing the kids home early. Like, it never happened. It only happened twice because the parents ran out of money.
Oh.
Because those places cost $9,000 a month.
The treatment center?
Yeah.
Jeez.
$300 a day.
Goodness.
So, yeah, my parents spent in the neighborhood of $100,000 to put me through that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So, like, so do you know you're going to the treatment center before they come? Like, you're week 7, they come. Do you know that's where you're going next? Do you have any idea before they come visit or come?
Yeah. So they told me about halfway into my wilderness that I was going to a treatment center after. So what my parents did while I was out in the wilderness is they flew out to Utah and, like, toured a few treatment centers, and they kind of, like, took notes on each one, and then they narrowed it down to 2, and they let me pick between the 2. So they just kind of gave me, like, a vague outline of, like, what the deal was with. I was in one of the rare few that's co-ed.
Okay.
So my treatment center had girls in it. So that's why I picked it.
Yeah.
They're almost, that to date, that's the only one I've heard of that is mixed gender.
Okay.
Everything else is always all boys or all girls. So yeah, so I knew that I was going. They picked me up and drove me there, and, like, we all toured the school together, and then they dropped me off, and I was then, like, really bummed, but also just kind of glad to not be in the wilderness anymore. It's glad to be like sleeping in a bed and like actually eating some somewhat usually decent food. But
Yeah.
um,
What was the
go ahead.
drive like with your parents? Like, were you
Well,
mad when you saw them, or were you humbled through that experience?
I was I was not mad when I saw them, but I definitely did try and talk them out of taking me to the treatment center. I pretty much said, like, I sat them down and was like, I'll do whatever it takes to go back home. Like, I'll follow any rule that you make for me. And if I do one single thing wrong, you can send me right back out here. Like, I pretty much pleaded with them. And the therapist at the Wilderness was like, you don't want to put them through this. Like, they've been through enough. Like, they don't want to hear it. And like, so yeah, it was just another like instance of them conditioning, the parents to, they had my parents sold on the fact that I was gonna, even though I wasn't doing any like, wasn't on any hard drugs,
Yeah.
I wasn't on anything that's gonna kill you, but they have the parents convinced that it's a matter of life or death.
Yeah.
And my parents would always say the same thing. They were like, we're saving your life. That's what that's what
they were taught.
That was kind of the whole deal with the thing, was have them convinced that they'll die if they don't go through this program.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was any time you tried to convince your parents to, the conversation went to you convincing your parents to let you come home, they would cut the conversation off. Like, it just, it was just so clear that it was going to happen. So I went through my treatment center, and yeah, I was on perfect behavior the entire time. I was on perfect behavior all of Wilderness too. I was never like disrespectful of like authority. Like, I never was like mean to my teacher. I never gave my teachers any problems. I had bad grades, but I never took an attitude with my teachers. I never got in trouble with the school.
Yeah.
Or the law. And yeah, I did, in Wilderness, I did everything that I was supposed to do. No backlash to the staff. Like, I didn't give them any pushback whatsoever. And I did the same in my treatment center. And they still kept me in there for 9 months. And so my dad told me not too long ago that they actually tried to push them to keep me in for a year. And then my parents were like, no, like, that's when they finally were like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like, he's done. He's coming home.
Yeah.
Yeah, the treatment center it had its moments. It was, it wasn't as strict as like those horrible ones that you read about, like Paris Hilton's, where they like put you in solitary confinement and stuff like that. And they were also rather, the staff was also nice there. It was the administration that were the bad guys, that were kind of, keeping you in there for your money. And the staff was, they actually made the experience for me, at least at my place. They were always really cool. But our parents get to visit at first. So at first they come out like once a month, 1 weekend a month, and they can take you out of the school. Like, they can take you to, like, get a hotel and take you there. And then about 3 months in, I got to visit home for the first time. And
wow.
I got to visit home after being gone for 5 months. And I only got to be home for 36 hours, and I was like under watch the whole time, but as you kind of work your way up and develop some trust and like gain a little bit more freedom. And then, by like, I don't know, a couple months after that, I would get to come home for like 5 days, and I can like go and do stuff, unsupervised. And
Did you turn 16 while you were in that program?
my 16th birthday was the day that I got out of the wilderness.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The day that my parents
I was
came
just
out
curious how that felt.
to Utah. That was my sweet 16. And
here we go, son. We're gonna take you to the next place.
yeah. But I think, I mean, in that treatment center was where I kind of first started like practicing my comedy, if you could say. Like,
Perfect.
because,
So hold on to that, because I want to go to that next. So my question before we like shift gears is, do you feel like that whole experience that you just shared, do you feel like at the end of the day that was good for you?
No, but I think I like took good out of a bad situation.
Okay. So you don't necessarily feel like it was like what you needed, or like it saved me, because it doesn't sound like you were like out, smoking doing cocaine off somebody's butt cheek or anything. Like you weren't a horrible 15-year-old. It doesn't sound like. Maybe
No,
insubordinate,
no, I was in a phase. I was in hindsight, I was just in a phase,
Yeah.
I think that had we just waited 3 months, it would have cooled off.
Gotcha.
Like, it would have blown right past it.
And you just chose to find the pot, you just found the good through it now.
Yeah. And I wonder if I would even be a comedian if I had not gone through it, because
Right.
they say that humor comes from like trauma, and I never viewed that experience as trauma, because I mean, they have you so heavily brainwashed while you're in there that this is like so good for you, that even the students are like become like, it's like Stockholm syndrome. Like, they become like grateful for all this suffering that they're going through, and they have you just like so heavily set on the fact that, or the idea that if you're in there, you deserve it. Like, you deserve to. Nobody's in here who doesn't deserve it.
Gotcha.
Even though there's not like any requirements to be sent there. Like, you don't have
anybody
to
can go.
They'll take in anybody, and
especially if you'll pay.
And if any, I mean, and they train the other students to like kind of like, dare I say, come down on each other. If anyone's like, oh, like, I don't think like what I did was this bad, then some other student's gonna jump and be like, well, you're here, like, you found your way here.
Oh, wow.
And they also have kind of this heavy like snitching culture. Like, you get rewarded if you, for lack of a better word, tattle on another student. They call it holding each other accountable, but it's just tattling.
Yeah.
So because if you get another student in trouble, they can convince your parents you need to stay there longer.
Because you've done something wrong.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, like so and so snuck a cell phone in here, or so and so like has porn or something. They can convince your parents that you need to stay there for months longer, which is what happened every time someone got in trouble. So that's why I behaved perfectly. I was trying to get out of there.
Yeah.
I was smart. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned that's where you started working on comedy. That's what I really wanted. I'm so curious how people develop a desire and then the skill for comedy. So, and I know I interrupted you, so let's take it right back to where you started to say that you started to work on comedy. What do you mean by that? Did you know, was there before that, was comedy on your radar?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Where did that start?
I mean, God, since I remember the first time seeing comedy when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and Seinfeld would come on. My parents loved to watch Seinfeld, so I remember watching it. Everyone would be like, "Oh, okay, be quiet, Seinfeld's on," and like watching this little stand-up bit at the beginning of the show, and I was like, "Oh, like that's really cool," and just being like really intrigued by it. And then I think when I was probably about 12, I saw like Nick Swartzen's Comedy Central Presents special, and I just thought it was so funny. And going through middle school and high school, like when Dane Cook was like the man, and I would go and like kind of like practice stand up, like use his jokes, but like practice like delivering and time. That was kind of my first that's where I like was like trying to learn like the cadence of stand up and just like, and when I was, yeah, so when I got to the treatment center, I would, when we had the group sessions in the evening, it would be, you know, everyone on the dorm. So it would be like, you know, about 20 guys, and we'd all be having a group session. And my goal was always to like make people laugh.
Okay. I was actually going to ask you that if you were like the class clown or always found, you know, a way to be funny, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I really became the class clown until I got to the treatment center.
Okay.
I mean, that's when I was like really like, every time we were all grouped together, my goal was to get a laugh out of the crowd, if you will. Like, and yeah, that was when I started to like, you know, try and develop, and I would, you know, try and write jokes and tell them to my friends and be like, you know, do you think this is funny? And try and like do bits, and I'm sure they were terrible, but it was that was really where it kind of started for me. You know, I knew I wasn't going to be a professional surfer or anything, so you know, I figured that out by then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of like where it really sort of took the next step for me.
Okay. And so you get out of the treatment center, and then what's life like after that?
So I got out, and my mom was like, well, you know, I don't want you moving back to Long Beach, because she wanted me to make some new friends and like just find new people to be around. So she moved me down to Laguna Beach, which is like, just, you know, it's like 45 minutes south. And so I, you know, I had to start new at a new high school halfway through my.
So like, did you guys pack up and move?
No, she had already moved by the time that I got out.
She or they, like the family,
Oh,
or were they
so,
separate?
so my parents had split up. Like, my parents separated a little bit before I got sent away.
Okay.
So they were going through a divorce while I was gone.
Okay. And did they, but they mutually like worked with you through your whole process?
Yeah. My parents are like, they're at peace, you know, they're friends. They don't, it wasn't like a messy divorce
Cool.
or anything. So yeah, so my parents actually both moved down to Laguna Beach, but separately.
Gotcha.
So they were just, you know, trying to get me started in a new place. Okay. But now I have to go to like Laguna Beach High School as, you know, the new kid fresh out of this treatment center. And
thanks, Mom.
Talk about like the most intimidating place to go to school.
Yeah.
My God, like kids there were on just another level of rich.
Yeah.
It's wild how much money they have down there. Like, these kids are getting $100,000 cars for their 16th birthdays.
Right.
And these, you know, it's just like, so just not the real world. Like,
right.
I mean, all those kids live in these like massive, like insane houses on the beach, and they do these like crazy vacations, and they, you know, they all go to the nicest schools that their parents pay for, of course. Like, so yeah, I was just like, you know, I'm just like driving my little like Ford Ranger pickup, and then everyone's got like these new Mercedes and stuff, 5 Series BMWs, and so I was very like intimidated going there, and I, you know, I had to try and make new friends, and that was the struggle. I mostly just went to Long Beach on the weekends, anyways. So and over time, I kind of transitioned into having some, you know, some friends in Laguna, and you know, transitioned into just staying down there. And yeah, but I kept right on, you know, practicing my comedy with my friends at Laguna Beach High. So
that's crazy. So, and you, when you went to there, were you, I guess, would that have been your sophomore year, or did you miss your sophomore year?
it was my junior year.
Okay.
So I missed the end. I got sent away at the end of my sophomore year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I came back about just over halfway through my release. I remember my release date was February 28th of 2008.
Gotcha.
So So that was the day that so I think by March 1st, I was in school at Laguna Beach High.
Jeez,
Um,
that's
yeah.
crazy. All right, so
Yeah.
you've got your eyes on comedy. You go to this new school, and then so what happens after that? Like, give me the the short version of from after that to now. Like, did you just keep perfecting that? Did you get normal jobs through school, or have you always been able to follow comedy, or where did you start taking
Uh,
it super serious?
so I fear kept me off stage until I was about 19, and
Okay.
that summer I did like a couple open mics, and I would do open mics when I was in college, like, but just very sporadically, like, just a few a year. And then college, I just knew it wasn't going to work out for me. So I was like, I'm going to just go and like go full on into this comedy thing. And, you know, obviously it takes a lot of time to be able to make money off of comedy. So yeah, I dropped out and I dropped out 8 years ago, and I worked, I valeted cars at a Marriott hotel, and I drove for like Uber and Lyft, and I would just kind of like work on my stand up at night. And then I actually worked running errands for David Lee Roth. That
Really?
was, yeah,
Oh, dude, I can't wait. I got a funny story for you in a minute. Okay. We're gonna
yeah,
talk in a second. Okay, so was that was still California then?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I came back to California 8 years ago.
Okay.
And so yeah, this was all in California. I never did any comedy in Hawaii.
Okay.
So I would do David Lee Roth's, like, it was just whatever gig to make money. I did that for almost 2 years, and drove Uber, like, and then kind of just then David just ghosted me. He stopped hitting me up for work one day.
Okay. Before we go anywhere away from David Lee Roth, we have to talk about this. So, how did you end up with him, first of all?
So my sister did his social media.
I
So
just
that's her business, is running
okay.
social media accounts for like restaurants and businesses. So she like gets them followers and engagements in their posts, and makes their profiles look more professional.
Right.
So
So,
she
like a
acquired
content creator.
him. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, somewhat. So she got him as a client, and then he was like, "Oh, I need like an extra hand around here." And so my
Where
sister was
was he
like, "Oh,
living? Where was this at?
he, li- he lives in LA, in Pasadena,
Okay.
which is about an hour. Takes me about an hour to get there.
Okay.
Um, Half hour with no traffic, which never. So, so yeah. So he, it was just a part-time thing, but he paid very generously, and it was a good, easy gig. And yeah, I did that for almost 2 years.
Okay. So so I was a strip club DJ forever. Ever for 13 years. I actually DJ. I'm back. I was out of it for 8 years. I'm back in it very, very part-time. I DJ a little bit now again, which is crazy. But I worked at the biggest club in Oklahoma forever. So I've been it's very fortunate to meet everybody. As you can imagine, the biggest strip club in the state, everybody comes in there. So and I've got a lot of stories, and we won't talk about a bunch of stories, but the funniest thing, I tell people this all the time, the biggest D-bag story I have is David Lee Roth.
Yeah,
I never met him, but this is what happens. This huge black dude comes in, and he's like, and I'm in the DJ booth, which is way up high. I would have never known about this, but dude comes in, and he's like, and he tells like the floor walker or the manager or whatever, he's like, man, I've got this, like, nobody can know, but I've got like a big, this is probably in like mid 2000s. And he's like, man, I've got like a bit, nobody can know, but I got this big celebrity. Nobody can know. Like, he's making a huge deal, but telling you nobody can know. Right. And he's like, I've got David Lee Roth, but don't tell anybody, So they go sit at this table. Anyways, long story short, they're there for like 2 hours, and they make such a big deal out of telling people that they shouldn't know who he is, but they're like making a big deal that he's there. And he ends up walking his tab, dude. It was like $97. And I'm like, of all the people to walk a tab, like David Lee Roth, come on. Like, it's not like he didn't have $97, right? And
Yeah.
So I always talk about him like that's just so crazy. I never met him. I don't know what kind of character he is or anything like that, but I just thought it was so funny. The one person that like, and it would have been no big deal except that his security guy was making such a big deal out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, it
Yeah, he
was really,
probably would have gone pretty much unrecognized because
yeah,
he looked.
probably.
You know, I'm not allowed to talk about. I didn't do anything exciting, but I was still under like NDA, you know, like
Sure.
non-disclosure agreements. But it was never anything exciting. Like I know, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would. But I can't say like I would be in public with him, and rarely did anybody like say anything to him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and he played it cool. Like, he didn't do anything crazy, nothing stupid. Like, it was very low key. It was his guy that was making a much bigger deal out of it. But it still is kind of crazy and kind of debaggy that they didn't pay their tab. It certainly could have been an accident, but it was just kind of funny, you know. So, anyways, that's my David Lee Roth story. But cool. Okay, so you did that to help pay some bills, and then what? Like, at what point did you stop having to do any side work so you could just kill it at comedy?
I mean, pretty much just last year. Like,
Awesome.
so yeah, so well, I was doing pretty well, and you know, it's obvious COVID set me back.
Yeah.
Tremendous. I was doing pretty well at the start, you know, going into 2020. I had some good dates lined up, and I would just, you know, still kind of Uber drive when I was off the road, and you know, I'd have sporadic paid weekend, and then yeah, COVID came through and like canceled a bunch of dates for me, and you know, a lot of them I never got back. And when the clubs started to kind of reopen and the superstars couldn't do their like theater shows or their arena shows, they were all using the clubs, so it kind of pushed guys like me out. So I pretty much just went back to, I was Uber driving pretty much full time again. And yeah, so then in September I won the World Series of Comedy. And
talk about that. What is that? Is that what's that?
So it's like it's a national stand-up event, and it's like 6 months long, and it's like over like 10 states. They have between 10 and 12 what are called satellite or qualifier events each year, and each one has 40 comics. So you can enter into as many satellites as you want, and you can do as many as you get invited to. And they take your top score, and then the top 100 overall, out of top 101 out of all those satellites, get invited to the main event in Vegas.
Okay.
And it's cool. Like, it's a great event. You know, you get a lot of opportunity out of it. I'd say it's got to provide more opportunity than any other event in stand-up that I've ever heard of. And if you do a satellite and you don't do well, you can do another one, and they'll only take your highest score.
Nice.
So yeah, so there's like, you know, room for error if you don't do well. So yeah, I've done it every year since 2017. That was my year on the World Series, and I made it to Vegas every year, and I did pretty well. I always advanced to at least once, and that was kind of what started to build my road career. Was in 2017, the first year that I did it. That's when I started to like pick up, you know, travel for comedy. I'm like but it wasn't enough to live off. And then yeah, so when you win it, you get into like all the clubs that they're affiliated with. Nice. Which is, you know, the Looney Bins are one of them.
Okay.
So you get to work all those clubs. And I mean, on top of that, you get to have that as a credit. So even the clubs that aren't affiliated, you know, having that as a win, you can just say like, I won the World Series. It's gotten me like a lot of work, like huge boost in my career. You also get an album deal out of it, and which I've not recorded mine yet. And you get it got me on the news. So
really?
it got me in the local newspaper here in Long Beach first, and then ABC7 hit me up to interview me. So both the local news and the newspaper plugged some shows of mine. So I produced I self-produced a couple, 3 shows that all sold out.
Wow.
I didn't do them at a comedy club because comedy clubs are going to want to take a percentage of the sales. So I ran it at my buddy's bar.
Perfect.
It was perfect because he's got like a side room that's ideal for comedy. So perfect little showroom. And it worked out great because I just got to keep all the ticket money myself. And then I brought him, 50
Sales.
plus customers per night.
Yeah.
And I slapped a 2-drink minimum on it. So it helped make the bar a bunch of money. So yeah, the news and the newspaper, they plugged it. So that sold out 2 shows. And then the new ABC7 came to the show to cover the show. And, they're like, oh, we're going to plug another show for you. So I produced another one the next month. So it was like 3 sold out shows.
Yeah.
Off of those, those little like plugs from the news. And it was cool. This is like my first time like having people show up to see me,
Yeah, absolutely.
So my first kind of experience, because I don't have any major following or anything like
Sure.
that. So one kind of tiff that people have with the World Series of Comedy is you don't win any cash directly. Like there's no cash prize. A lot of events, San Francisco Comedy Competition or Seattle International, it's $5,000 if you win it. But that's all that you get, like you don't really, you have it on your resume, but there's no industry at those events. You're not like really expanding your career.
Yeah, it's not exposure per se.
Yeah, like it's versus the World Series, they have club owners, from all over that they come out to the event. So they'll come and watch in person. And I mean, even the industry that's not there physically, you still get put into touch with them. So,
It's priceless.
Yeah. So some people think that like you're only performing for like the 12 club owners that flew out. It's like, no, you're performing like those results are going to get sent to every club that is affiliated with the series. They don't have to be there physically watching you.
Yeah.
They'll come out because it's fun,
Yeah.
Free trip to Vegas and they get to watch and kind of scout, but you get work like far beyond that, and you get to work those clubs every year indefinitely, and you get moved up to headliner eventually. So in the long run, it's way better. I'd way rather have that than just a $5,000 check and right back to your regular schedule.
Yeah.
So it's a people will be like, oh, I'm not doing it because they don't pay the winner, but it's like I've made way more than $5,000 off of winning that event.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, the work it's been so much easier to get when you have that kind of a win under your belt.
Yeah. Dude, that's so good. I love that you are smart enough to know the logic in that, because yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, anything I do in business and in life, I want to play the long game anyways, and that's a long game decision. Exposure is everything. I used to want to be a country music singer back in the day, man. And I'm telling you, like I did a lot of stuff for no dollars, because my goal was not to get paid today. My goal was to be seen, or heard, or build a relationship. Now I'm a realtor, so for me, it's even to this day, it's like I'd much rather meet somebody than try and like sell you the first house you see, because down the road, who knows how that's going to pay off, and so, yeah, that's awesome. So, so you are, I mean, it's safe to say that this is your full time now. For the last year, you haven't had to do any side work.
Yeah, what I do sometimes is like I do a little bit of Uber driving still, because sometimes I just need to take time off traveling.
Cool.
So like, I mean, every few, probably like every 4 months, I take the month off traveling and I just do local gigs.
Nice. And
I still make money off of that, but not enough to like stay to not a significant profit. Sure. So to like avoid dipping into savings, I'll just like Uber drive around the neighborhood. Yeah. And it's still like part-time. It's still like, it'll be like, maybe
it helps make you some extra.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll do it maybe like 20 hours a week. And yeah, because the traveling, I love it, but you just need a break,
Sure.
Sometimes traveling.
where do you, two questions. First, on the Ubering, do you, because I got to visit with you, and it's interesting actually how many comedians are actually kind of quiet and a little bit humble. I feel like you were, I don't know, I think we didn't hang out, but I feel like you're kind of maybe a little more quiet and humble. Do you take advantage of being in Uber? Like, do you promote yourself at all, or do you just drive the car and keep your mouth
No,
shut?
I don't even tell people that I'm a comedian.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Like,
just
it's
curious
just,
'cause,
I hate people's reactions to it, you know, like, because
yeah,
they'll always be like, oh, like, say something funny, or
yeah, and you're
like,
like, "Ugh."
do a joke.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I don't, fortunately it rarely come very occasionally will they be like, oh, like, what else do you do?
yeah,
And I'll be like, oh, this is all, like,
yeah,
but yeah, it's just, obviously I'll tell someone that I'm like gonna know, like, for a while, that I'm a comedian, like someone who's gonna be like in my life. But just a stranger who I'm driving for like 10 minutes, I don't want to, like, I don't like
yeah,
to tell people.
yeah.
um so yeah,
Gotcha.
I just
And
don't.
what about your material? Where do you pull from, like as far as what gives you your inspiration? And then also, second part to that question is, where do you find the time and inspiration to write? Like, what's your jam for that? Like, is it like, hey, when I'm off for that month, I find that that's my, when do you write? What's your jam?
It's very hard for me personally to like sit and write. Like when I try, like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and like come up with like, sometimes I make a little progress, but I find that my best stuff comes from me like having like conversations, and like kind of like jokes that I think of like I think of a good comeback or something, or like, and I'll be like, I'll work that into like, a bit. Uh, just stuff like that. So yeah, I try to write when I'm on the road because I have so much free time, and I'm usually in the middle of a town where I don't know anybody
Uh,
and don't have anywhere to go. But um, I'll just like journal, and like kind of let my thoughts run. And like basically my notebook is like a journal that I try to make funny, and then I try to like pull jokes from that. But
okay.
a lot of it just inspired by like, pretty much everything that you saw is in some way based in my real life.
Yeah.
It's not all, like, I say that I live with my dad. I don't actually live with my dad, but I say it in my act because it makes it funnier.
Oh, of
And like,
course.
I have good jokes about it.
Yeah.
And I have lived with him at points, since I've been out of college. I've, had to stay with him for a few months here and there. Um, and I've, then I help him out because he had a stroke a couple years ago. So I like would, kind of after that happened, I was at his house a lot, just helping him out. So I didn't live there, but I pretty much did. I was
Yeah.
there all the time. So it's, yeah, since I talk about dropping out of college and like,
Yeah.
so it's all like, it's not all true stuff, like, but
Sure.
it's in some way based. It's based on a true story, as they'd say in
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Well, no, I love that. And there's no shame in that. I mean, it doesn't, first of all, you're the artist, right? And so
Yeah.
you get to pull whatever works for you to be. I mean, that's your opportunity to be creative however you choose to be. So I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't personally think that I mean, I don't go to a lot of comedy, but you're not the only person to say they've ever lived with their parents, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's there's some humor in that, and we can all relate, dude. I'm 45. I lived with my mom a year and a half ago, like my son and I, like, I mean, and that's real, so like we're humans, but there's seasons of life sometimes you really do have to go through that. That's relatable for people too sometimes, so it's funny, and there's a lot of spins you can have on something like that, so, but whether it's awesome. So do you really journal on, like, is that a daily thing, or is that just when you're on the road? Because I admire that. I don't write anything, and I admire somebody who actually takes the time to do that.
Yeah, I usually do it mostly just on the road. But it depends. It's whenever when I feel like it. And I try to like, I'll usually start it with like, because it'll just be like an update on how it's going. Like, oh, like, I'm here in Oklahoma City. First show last night was awesome. Second show a little rowdy. This and that happened today. And try and like try and like run into like writing some funny stuff. And I also do it because I know that like I plan on having this career for the rest of my life, you know, for as long, this is what I plan on doing forever. So I know that in X amount of years, I'm going to look back on this stuff and it's going to be gold, you know, like
Yeah.
who knows, like 30 years from now, I could have an HBO special and be looking back to like when I was middling on the road at, you know, 30. And it's like, same thing with like my, you know, my English teacher at Laguna Beach High had us do journals every, you know, we would write a just one page journal entry at the start of each class. And he's like, you're going to look back on this and it's going to be gold. And it is like, you know, looking back on stuff so yeah, I do it for the humor and the inspiration and for the sentimental value of it.
Yeah. I started podcasting the beginning of 2020, and I had tossed the idea around for a really long time, but one of the real driving forces to start January of 2020 was for that reason, because I knew I could look back and see my progress, you know. And I've heard of other people that do podcasts and YouTubes, and they talk about like, I want this to be like, this is my journal for my kids, like I'm leaving part of my legacy, you know. So I think that's also cool. Like you're gonna have these journal entries for forever. When you know, you look, like you said, you're doing an HBO special at 50, you've got your archives back from the early days. That's awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up, man, like let me just nail a couple questions to you. So first of all, what does Wyatt's day-to-day life look like? So you travel as an artist or as a comedian, you're on the road. Like, when do you usually leave out? Wednesday, Thursday?
I'm usually gone Wednesday or Thursday until Sunday.
Okay. And then what's life like when you're not on the road? So you come home on Sunday, what's life like?
Sunday is usually just like relaxing, and you know, like you usually go home and just go right to sleep. And then the days off are spent like taking care of whatever I have to take care of at home.
Okay.
So, you know, hanging out with people, or you know, going to see whoever and getting my laundry done and getting packed up and sending emails, booking, you know, future dates, and surfing. You know, I surf, usually wake up in the morning and go surfing, and then that takes up the whole first half of my day.
And so you surf like pretty regularly. Do you think you surf at least a couple times a week?
Yeah, I mean, I surf all that I can, because you know, like sometimes I have to go weeks without it because you know, like I was just on the East Coast for 2 weeks, so I couldn't surf, and you know, I got home and the waves were flat for the 2 days that I was home, and then I had to take right back off again. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, every day that that I'm home, and that's another reason why I like to just take you know, months off the road, is to just be able to surf all the time.
Yeah.
So I usually aim for the best surfing months to take those months off the road.
Smart. That's awesome.
And yeah, like, so yeah, surfing and just kind of chilling, and you know, I work out a fair bit, you know, try and, because it's hard to work out on the road, so I try and like catch up on exercise and stuff like that. And
yeah
and
cool.
That's it, enjoying my time, really.
Yeah. Do you so how's your relationship with your parents and your sister now?
Oh, it's good. It's good. You know, like both of my parents have like apologized for the whole thing, you know, and it was a long time ago. And my sister is cool. Like, she lives, you know, she and I never, well, we would cat fight we would argue growing up when we were kids, but we didn't have any real problems. So she lives like just a mile down the street from me.
Awesome.
And with her 2 daughters. And yeah, my parents are all in Long Beach.
Gotcha.
You know, and
so
then
you all ended up back in Long Beach.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep. And then
cool.
Yeah, I have a half sister up in Washington, and she has 2 daughters as well.
Cool. All right, man. So like, you're 30 years old, you're doing comedy, you're doing it basically full time. You know, I ask you that, I've circled around to that question a couple times. And the reason I've done that, man, is because like, whether you have to work a part-time gig or not, like there's no shame in that. But to me, when you can focus your energy on, and I'm not trying to be weird or anything, but like when you can do what you're passionate about and when you love, that to me is when you've like really made it. Like
Yeah.
when you're doing what you absolutely love, to me, that's the goal. I don't think enough people do that. I think so many people give up on what they want to do and they don't even like take that part serious. So if you have to support what you love by working 5 days a week and then the rest of the time you get to love what you do, whatever it looks like is awesome, as long as
Yeah.
you still get to focus on your passions and what you love. And so like you said, dude, if you have to Uber occasionally, who cares,
Yeah.
but the reality is you are focusing pretty much full time on what you love to do. And you touched on like bookings, and you were talking about emails and stuff. So you book and you manage yourself. There's no,
Yeah.
you're not having to pay 15% to any agents or anything
No.
like that. You're doing it all on your own. Do you intend to try and keep it that way as long as you can?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy that? All right. Do you get frustrated like, damn, I wish somebody handled this for me?
No, it's easy. It's easy to do. I just have like a list of people that I email, and if I don't respond, I just follow up once a month.
Okay.
Set reminders in my phone. Like, so say I email, if I email like Laughs Boston today and they don't get, I'll set a reminder. I'll say, hey Siri, remind me to email Laughs Boston 1 month from today. So if they don't get back to me, I follow up in a month. So it's pretty, it's pretty easy. It's not a lot of, it's not like it's 8 hours of sitting at the
Yeah.
computer, like shooting out a few emails sporadically. So it's not a ton of work. I
Cool.
just, they give me dates, and I just book the flight, and that it's easy peasy really.
Yeah.
Um,
I've always wondered this with comedians. Do you eat the cost of your flights in a hotel, or is that usually able to be built in?
so you have to pay for your flights. They house you. The majority of pretty much all the time they house you.
Okay.
Certain clubs, but they tell you what you're gonna get, and it's basically they say what you're gonna get. You decide if it's worth it.
Okay.
I'm fortunate to like make a lot of money off my t-shirts that I sell, so that opens the door for me to profit way more. And I also just try and like book gigs like close together. So like when I was in OKC, I was in Tulsa the weekend before, so I didn't have to like fly back.
Yeah.
So doing that, cuts down on your travel costs. And then I did like South Carolina and Florida back to back. So
Gotcha.
yeah, that's just kind of some ways that I
Save.
profit a little bit more.
Cool. Cool. And you get to keep generally, do you keep 100% of your merchandise sales, or are there any clubs that take a piece?
No, I've not ever heard of a club taking a percentage of it.
In the music industry, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad that that's not in your case.
Yeah, they encourage you to sell. They're very accommodating selling merch because probably puts less pressure on them to pay you more.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is fine. Whatever. I mean,
yeah.
Good. Cool. Okay. So, last question and we'll wrap up. So do you, like, where do you see, I started to say this again earlier and I got sidetracked, but like you're 30 years old, things are going really well for you. It seems like, you're booked. I mean, are you booked pretty much 4 weekends out of the month unless you intentionally take time off?
Yeah.
Okay. So where do you want to be? Like, are you the guy that like you journal, but do you goal set? Do you have like a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan?
I really just try and like, take it as I try not to rush anything.
Okay.
Try to like just, I have an idea of what I want to do, but like, I try not, because when you rush in comedy, or when you rush in anything, it lowers the quality.
Absolutely.
So I always, I have stuff I want to do, but I'm very like, I'm gonna do it try it when I'm ready for it.
Sure.
Like I'd rather be late than too early.
Okay. So having said that, do you like, if you could be anywhere you want to be at some level on a stage, whether that's on a TV show, whether that's on a whatever platform it is, 10 years from now, where would you love to see yourself? And answer this question like if nobody was listening, like be really real with that answer.
I would mostly like to have like major specials like HBO or Showtime or Netflix, whatever.
Okay.
Like that's what I'm really geared towards. I don't really think much about acting. Like I've never like really put any effort into trying to act or like being on a TV show. Like if someone offered it to me, of course I would take it, but
Yeah.
I'll come second to my stand-up.
Yeah. So would you, but you'd rather have like you'd love to be on have some specials or some television stuff of like you live or whatever, some stand-up stuff versus like, do you, in 10 years, do you still want to be on the road just as much, do you think, or would you rather, do you think you
Uh,
have like some television exposure?
I'd like to be able to travel still, but maybe a little bit less.
Yeah.
So if I could make some more money, then that would allow me to travel less.
Yeah. Bigger gigs, less of them.
Yes,
Cool.
that would be pretty cool.
All right.
But I plan to travel.
Who is your biggest in comedy, your absolute biggest inspiration, dead or alive?
Oh God. I mean, right now, I really love Nate Bargatze right now.
Okay.
I was very inspired by like Lachlan Patterson when I was, getting into stand up. If you know who that is, I saw him live. He was just incredible.
Yeah. He was on a show because I only know that name because of a show. Was he wasn't Last Man Standing or Last Comic Standing?
He was runner up.
Okay. That's how I know that name. Yeah.
He was runner up in 2014.
Okay. Josh Blue was in our club, and you know who that is, right?
Yeah.
He was in our club 2 weekends ago. He played in Bricktown. I didn't go, but my buddy that's a DJ texted me either last weekend or the weekend before. He goes, and he loves comedy. He goes, man, Josh Blue just walked out of our club, out of where I work part time. I said, that's cool. He goes, yeah, the waitress thought he was drunk. I said, I bet that happens every time. He's probably used to it.
Oh yeah.
But that's cool. So Lachlan what's his last name? Patterson?
Patterson, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he's one, and then Nate, what was late? Because I don't know that name. Nate what?
Nate Bargatze.
Okay, I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, he's got a number of Netflix specials.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So those are like probably the guys that you've probably like been influenced by or inspired by the most.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And yeah.
Cool. Right on, man. Dude, I appreciate you. It's cool to just like, this is kind of a new wheelhouse for me. So it's just real cool to like pick your brain and hear more about things from the comedy side. And one last question, dude. Like, do you ever feel like, is there ever a time you don't want to perform because you just don't feel funny?
I definitely have times that I don't feel funny, but I'm always down to perform. It's like, hey, it's all scripted. So
right.
Yeah.
Like but you never like are about to get on stage and like, I'm just not feeling it, or like, cause you're a human.
Really, not really. It's pretty easy to snap into like character
mode. Yeah. Good. Well, I enjoyed it, dude. You're hilarious. I think you're great. I'm so glad I got to catch you in Oklahoma City. Where are you at next? And of course, I always try and make sure I throw this out there. I'm going to put all your info in the description on YouTube, and as well as all the everywhere else socially, so people will be able to find you. But where are you going to be playing this particular weekend? And then also maybe tell us where people can find you.
So this weekend I'll be at Thursday. I'll be at the House of Blues in Chicago, and then Friday and Saturday I'm at Skyline Comedy Club in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Find me on Instagram at Bad Guy YY.
That guy YY.
Bad Guy YY.
Bad Guy YY. Okay.
You follow me, right?
Yeah, I follow you, and I'll tag you. And make sure everybody can find you as well, dude. I appreciate you, Wyatt. Have an awesome day. Have a great week. Enjoy your comedy this weekend, and we'll see you again, man. Thank you so much.